All right, so I'm sitting here today with Adam Loudin of Mountain State Kennels. You just want to start off by introducing yourself a little bit and telling us about yourself?
Yeah, I'm from West Virginia and I've been hunting these dogs for a long time. I started hunting squirrel dogs when I was 11 years old and I'm 38 now. And I started hunting cur dogs when I was, I think, 12. That's when I got my very first cur dog, and I bought her from Kansas City, Missouri, and she was shipped to me on a plane. And I just started with her and me and just going to the woods, and it's come a long way from there. But we've been breeding dogs ever since her, and honestly, all of our dogs go back to her. So it's
Okay.
kind of cool all these years later to have all that still going.
Um, I guess has your family always been involved in squirrel dogs then?
No, actually, my dad was involved with coonhounds in the 70s, late 70s. He started coon hunting with a good friend of his, and he hunted 5, 6 nights a week for several years, and then he got out of it. And when I was a kid, we hunted a lot, but we still hunted for squirrels or deer hunted or that kind of stuff. And we didn't have a dog. And in fact, I begged my parents to get me a dog, and they wouldn't do it. I grew up hearing the stories of Dad's coonhounds, and in
Yeah.
fact, Dad had a coonhound that was on the cover of Full Cry, and we had that magazine cover um, up on the wall. And I just kind of dreamed about that kind of stuff. But they wouldn't get me a dog, and eventually one day I was on the internet. Well, I had gone hunting with a guy. His name was John Love, and I went hunting with him, and he had a feist.
Okay.
And then I got on Squirrel Dog Central, and I was looking for a dog, and Joe McMillan, who lived out in Kansas, said that he would give me a pup. So I went to my parents and said, "Hey, I got this guy who's willing to give me one. I don't even have to buy it. You guys just have to let me have one." So they finally relented after all that time.
Well, that's good. Uh, I guess starting out, like raising squirrel dogs, did you kind of just do what you guys did with the coonhounds? I guess. Like, how did you notice any differences? I guess when you're starting squirrel dogs coming from coon dogs.
Well, my dad, one of the reasons my dad didn't want me to have a dog was he said, well, we didn't have anything to start it with. And when he was hunting coonhounds in the 70s, they just, turned pups loose with an older dog
You kind of just do Yeah.
to
what you guys did
get
with the
things
coonhounds, I
started.
guess. Like,
And
how did you
um,
notice any differences?
I'm sorry, I caught some of that other stuff there. There's some weird audio.
Okay.
Anyway, dad, uh, dad said I didn't have a dog to start a dog with. And, I told him, well, all these guys on the Squirrel Dog Central say you just hunt one by themselves. And that's what I started doing. And honestly, at the time, it seemed like well, maybe this was impossible. But now, of course, I would recommend everybody to start pups by themselves.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of happened with me out of necessity. But my dad thought this was a crazy idea because he just wasn't used to that with the coonhound stuff.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of the same way with coonhounds. That back then, um, they're they're a lot different. Even the last 15, 20 years. I was talking last night with a lot of guys that have been hunting for 40 and 50 years, talking about how even the dogs nowadays that they're hunting, they used to have a lot of trouble with them staying treed when they'd be treed, or like running deer and stuff like that. And anymore, a dog around here, the people I hunt with, the you're if you got a dog that'll tree, he's most likely gonna stay. Like I haven't had a dog leave a tree in I don't know how long. And as far as messing with junk, if nothing's moving, they might tree a squirrel at night, but I haven't had one run deer in a long time. So, and as far as starting dogs with other dogs, they've been bred by competition hunters for so long now that they're so naturally independent. It's almost counterproductive to hunt them with. I mean, there are people out there that have great luck hunting them with older dogs, coonhounds, and it works out for them. But I I pretty much start all my dogs completely by themselves, and then once I feel they're confident enough in what they're doing to put them with other dogs, I'll do it then. But it's mostly just by themselves.
Yeah, I mean that's how pretty much everyone does it anymore, and that's how I've always done it and had better success. But I will say that when I started in cur dogs, there were still a lot of dogs that wouldn't stay treed. In fact, a lot of dogs wouldn't stay treed back then. And anybody who hunted cur dog competition hunts 25 years ago will tell you that at that time, if you had a dog that would stay hooked That was half the battle. You could almost win cash just like that because people's dogs were, they were loose all the time. But nowadays, not so much. I mean, I don't go to a lot of hunts, but when I do, people's dogs stay hooked. I mean, it's not a problem anymore.
Yeah. I guess you just want to talk a little bit then about your line of dogs, and you started talking a little bit about the first dog you had, but you just want to kind of start from the beginning and work your way to where you're at now.
Yeah, sure. I mean, my first dog, she was out of a full brother and sister cross. And I didn't really even, I can't honestly say I made a decision to get into this line. I just got this dog because this guy was willing to give it to me.
Yeah.
But but I later found out that I had got into a line of really good tree dogs, and the line everybody refers to it as Duff's Bob. There was a guy named Harry Duff lived out in Indiana, and he had this line, and he made a several crosses over and over again. And the dog that I got, her mother is an OMCBA Hall of Fame dog, Bonnie Betty, and then her father was a full brother to her. And she was just a really good tree dog. And back then, we'd go to a competition hunt and do a treeing contest, and she was a more than 100 bark a minute tree dog, and that was a rarity
Yeah.
in Kirkland. So when when we had her there at the beginning, and she was doing a really good job, I started kind of shopping around for dogs to breed her to. And at the time, Alan Franklin was hunting Thunder in the hunts, and I went and hunted with him and was super impressed with him. And I ended up breeding her to him. And when I did, I kept a couple pups, two male pups, and I had them over at my uncle's running loose on his farm. And one of them was Apache.
Mhm.
And he was a 100 bark a minute tree dog at 5 months old. He was just one of these freak of nature natural dogs. And I got him, and I started hunting him by himself, and he was just awesome in pretty much every way. When you talk about dogs not running deer, he would run the heck out of a deer as a pup. And 5 months old, he ran a deer, probably about a mile or two, and I didn't have any tracking collar on him, and I was just hoping he'd come back, and eventually he did.
Yeah.
But anyway, he was just fantastic, and I started putting him in the hunts when he was, I think he was about a year and a half. And the first hunt he ever was in was the WTDA World Hunt, which at the time was really a big deal. And he got all the way to the final round and got second place in the hunt, first hunt he'd ever been in.
Jeez.
So that was a really big moment for me, and I think we went on to win. My dad keeps the stats on this stuff, but he won like 23 out of 25 or 6 casts that he was in, and he was just fantastic. And when this was all going on, Alan Franklin bred a female to him, and he kept one of the pups. I didn't actually keep one of the pups, and he kept the pup, and he was telling me about the pup, and it ended up being my Geronimo dog that I had.
Okay.
And Geronimo, he was just a really, really natural starter, and split treeing at 6 months old. He had it all young. And my dad talked Alan into selling him to us as a 6 month old or 7 month old puppy. And when I got him, I sold Apache. I'd been talking to some people who were interested in him, and a guy called me and offered me a big amount of money for him, and I didn't want to sell him to this guy, but it got me to thinking about that amount of money. So my good friend Mark Morrison bought him, and I really wanted him to go down south because there were so many more people hunting squirrel dogs down south than what there were where I lived.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that they would breed him and make bigger impact, and they certainly did. He got bred a lot more because he was down there in the end. But lucky for me, the times that we bred him before he left were really successful. In fact, we had Geronimo, who was, ended up being a world champion in the OMCBA Hall of Fame. Of course, there's a 2020 Tank. That breeding was done when Apache was still here. And then the world champion Devil's Creek Stretch, that breeding was done when Apache was still here.
Jeez.
So it was just really, we had a lot of success with him in the time we had. I think I sold him when he was 4 years old.
Okay, well, that was quite a bit and a pretty young age for a dog like that. But when I guess when they start as naturally as they did early, then it kind of changes the trajectory of their life a little bit.
Yeah, Dad wanted to, Dad wanted to breed him when he was young, and at the time, I didn't really think about it one way or the other of it being a good or a bad thing. But it ended up being good because, we bred him when he was young and he had some good pups, and then that gave him a lot more time. I think a lot of people wait and, they don't breed their male dog until they're like 4 or 5 years old. And when you really get down to it, if you only have 4 or 5 years of breeding the dog, sometimes it's hard to get a whole lot done in that period of time.
Yeah, and I've noticed a lot of people with coonhounds talking about that too. If you wait until they're older like that to breed them, you don't really know what you're reproducing until a couple years after they're born when they start doing some winning in hunts and stuff. And then by then, a couple more years passed and you got an old dog and you know what happens with old dogs. So I mean, if it's something that you just got to go with it when you feel it's right, but don't wait too long cuz it takes a while for that stuff to get back. Like you'll start hearing reports of dogs treeing and stuff, but sometimes people they'll get a really good dog and they won't know it's a reproducer until it's old and then miss out on a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, my dad, he's always just had a really good knack for figuring this kind of stuff out. And, Dad seems to figure out all the puppies and breedings, and of course we talk about it constantly. But he's a huge part of making all that happen. And it seems like my job is just to take these dogs hunting all the time,
Yeah.
which I enjoy that. But if my dad wasn't figuring all this stuff out and pushing the dogs forward, we wouldn't have come even close to having as many generations of good dogs as we have now.
Yeah. So I guess talking a little bit more about young dogs and you hunting them, what are some of your favorite methods in starting a young dog? And I guess when, like, walk me through the process of like when you do what you do.
Well, I mean, I think everybody talks about this, but you gotta mess with a young dog as a puppy, and I believe that fully. And in fact, in recent years, I've done more and more of that. It seems like with every pup, and I try to get them handling good, and I try to get them comfortable with me around the house. But I've always kind of made my decision about when to start working a pup based on the time of year.
Okay.
Um, I feel like there's two really great times to start a pup. One is, call it first to mid October, and then the other time is, late March, early April. That's the time that the squirrels are down on the ground the best.
Mm-hmm.
And I've tried to always like, if a dog's going to come 7 months old on the beginning of October, then yeah, I'm going to hunt it then.
Yeah.
But if a dog's going to turn 7 months old on August 1st, I'm not going to hunt it right
Yeah.
then. And I've always tried to get a dog in a situation where they can have some success, and I think that's really important. But I always just hunt them by themselves, and it seems to me that if you take a dog that's bred right and you hunt them for 30 days at the right period of time in the year, and they're old enough to do something, it just pretty much always works out if you hunt in that period of time. And I've always done that. I just, no matter what dog I've got at the time, if I've got a young dog and it's time to hunt them, I just put everything up and I follow that young dog for a month.
Okay.
It served me well.
Um, so I guess you want to make sure that you can hunt them pretty consistently without worrying about all the stuff you can't control. Pretty much, you don't have to start them and then lay them up a little bit and then get them back out. Is kind of what you're getting at.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes if you wait until a dog's a little bit older, that works better. And I know that me, I'm just totally obsessed. If I get a pup started, then I'm totally obsessed with the pup. And and I generally hunt 6 days a week, so it's like if I get one that's going, I want to go every day, and I make the hunt short, but I do hunt the pup every day. So I think sometimes the way that I work doesn't really fit with starting a 5 month old puppy or whatever. It fits better with starting a 10-month old puppy.
Yeah.
And I don't have a place to let the puppies run loose, and I don't have a starting kennel, excuse me, a starting pen in the woods or anything like that. For me, when it's time, I have to drive 30 minutes to hunt. I mean, that's just how it is.
Oh, geez.
And you know, it takes a lot of effort to get there. And, you know, sometimes I think it's bad to take these young pups and haul them around constantly. And I don't know. I've kind of always had good luck starting puppies at, you know, 8, 10 months kind of age.
Okay. So I guess you just turn them loose in the woods then and let them go on their own and just take them into good spots then.
Yeah, you know, I try to put them in good spots, um, and I turn them loose. But I'm really conscious about, you know, a lot of details with a puppy. But I don't like to walk on them at all once they start. I mean, as soon as they are doing something, I turn them loose, and I like to stand back and not move as much as I can. Um, I'm really aware of what's going on with trees when a pup starts. You know, I don't tie dogs to the trees. Um, I'm going in there. I'm teaching the dog to stay treed. Um, I mean, I really enjoy that. Starting those young dogs is my favorite thing, and it's hard for me to remember every detail of the process without it happening in front of me. But when you're watching one and you really know what you want one to be in the end, I think you make decisions based on that in the beginning.
Yeah, that makes sense because if you don't know exactly what you're looking for or what you want in a dog, you don't kind of there's no plan, there's no end goal that you just kind of out there doing whatever. You have to know what a good dog is, I guess. Have to have some sort of a measuring stick and know what type of performance you're looking for.
Well, you know, I've screwed up pups when I first started. Like for example, I want a dog to go hunting, and I would when I first started, I would walk my pups constantly, and then they would expect me to walk with them. Or you know, I want a dog to, you know, to stay treed well, and when I first started, I was in there looking for squirrels, and you know, just ignorant mistakes that you make when you don't know what the final product should look like. But you know, that comes with experience for anybody who's training dogs, and I think you know the final product needs to look like you want it to look. It looks different for different people.
Yeah,
So
that's a very good point because I mean, even and that's not just competition versus pleasure. I mean, every pleasure hunter is going to have a different preference, and every competition hunter is going to have a different preference too.
that's right. And you know, and I'll be honest with you. Sometimes my preferences has changed a bit. I mean, my original dogs, they didn't really hunt like the dogs that I'm hunting right now. Um, Maybe some of it was the way I trained them. I mean, I think definitely some of it was the way that I trained them. But I just look at things a little bit different. Of course, we've bred to try to get closer to what I'm looking for now. But for me, you know, a pleasure dog is a competition dog. It's all
Yeah.
the same thing, and I want them to operate that way. So
Yeah, I mean, that's online a huge topic and debate is pleasure hunters versus competition hunters, but I don't to me, I don't know the end result. You want to turn the dog loose and you want it to hustle and tree whatever you're trying to tree quickly and accurately. Both of them are trying to do that. So I mean, there's not the only real difference is competition hunters in the coon dog world, and I assume probably the squirrel dog. They don't want dogs necessarily be packing and backpacking on one another. They want them to go off and find their own work. But other than that, I mean, just getting treed and having what you're after.
yeah, I mean, it's to me. I only hunt in 2, 3 hunts a year, but I still it's like all my dog training. It's still me trying to make a dog look the way that I want a dog to look in a hunt.
Hmm.
But that's the way I want a dog to look. Period. I want them to be fast. I want them to be hustling. I want them to stay hooked. I want them to have the meat. I mean, I don't really necessarily see the pleasure dog competition dog argument as being a real thing,
Yeah.
except for, you know, when we first started, and I don't know, maybe it's still this way. People kind of a pleasure dog was a dog that I mean, I might get ripped for this, but a pleasure dog was a dog that didn't hustle and didn't hunt very far.
Yeah.
You know, and I have no interest in that. So,
No, I know what you're saying. It's more about being out there and just easier to catch, and the handle's more important than the go, I guess.
yeah, and you know what though, the handle, and I've thought about this and talked about this a million times, but that handle and it can be put on a dog that is a deep hunting dog just as easily as it can be put on anything else.
Yeah.
In fact, my dog right now, my crazy horse dog, he's as deep a hunting cur dog as anybody would want. And I'll tell you, he handles like a dream. And you can put that on a dog. Doesn't matter. Their desire is, to me, is totally separate from their ability to listen.
Yeah.
And you know, if you work a dog in the yard, like I work him in the yard, and heck, we throw the tennis ball every day, and you know he will do anything that I ask him to do, and he'll do it in the woods too. He just it's it it's more about being with that dog and working that stuff until you're really a team. I think it's really cool when you get a dog who's you're on the same page. You're really a team, and then when you cut them loose and they're 800 yards away, they're still thinking the same way you are.
Yeah. And that's just something that it comes with experience over years for you as a handler, and being able to kind of know how to make that connection and have patience when you're starting your own dogs, especially because I'm sure everyone that started their own dogs has been guilty about losing their patience with one when they shouldn't. Just just human nature, wanting, especially if you've hunted with good dogs at first and then you're starting from scratch. You just expect that young dog to just be just like the old dog, but that's just it's a lot of experience for you, and then it's a lot of woods time for you and that individual dog to get used to each other, and kind of just you're building a relationship with the dog. And that's every person I've known that has had success with dogs over the years, whether it be an individual really good dog or many young dogs they've started, they have been able to read that dog and what it needs in the moment, and just kept it going forward without setting it back. And when you do that, the dog is it's just like with people. You don't want to be irrational and hard on someone when it's not warranted, and they can understand that. I mean, they can read people's emotions better than some people can, honestly. Like if you're upset, you don't need to. If you've got a good connection with one, they can just look at you and know you're upset. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you hunt one for a long time, and I mean like an older dog, if it makes a mistake, it can just look at you and it's like, oh no, I like I screwed up. Like it don't take a lot. Once you get a good relationship with the dog, you don't have to say anything. Sometimes they can just look at you and know.
You know, you have to treat each one of them as an individual. And you know, I'm a school teacher, and it's the same way with kids. You know, some kids need to be pushed, some kids need to be comforted. It's the same way with a dog. You've got to adjust to what the dog needs, and heck, that's the fun part about it. If you just went out and ran them all through through this certain process, and they either did it or didn't, you know, that's no fun. I kind of like to look at it like, I mean, I want to get the most out of every one of them, and
Yeah,
that's not going to be the same final product. But it's cool to take one that doesn't necessarily operate like other ones you've had success with and be successful with it.
yeah,
I find that enjoyable because I like training dogs. You know, it's not just about having one that'll just do it naturally, which I love that, and of course everyone does.
yeah,
But I personally like to train the dog.
yeah, yeah. And it keeps it fresh and interesting, and it makes you better because you're constantly having to learn too. It's not just you're set. This is the method, and this is how you're doing it, and that's the way it's going to be. Because if you do that, then you're going to end up being disappointed if you do it for any amount of time. Because, like you said, they're all different. They all have different temperaments. Some dogs are just so hard headed and bold. You could do anything anytime to them, and it will not affect them. Other dogs, you could just barely raise your voice, and they will just cower. I mean, you have to know what you're doing, and it's nothing complicated. A lot of people that watch videos and podcasts and stuff want to try and learn how to do stuff like this, and it's very simple. Like all you have to do is just read the mannerisms in the moment and
Mm-hmm.
what's happening, and just be level headed, and calm and make whatever decision is best at that time. It it's not, you don't need to overthink it. Like how people have been teaching dogs to hunt for, just imagine hundreds of years ago before dogs were bred the way they are now. Like you're starting from scratch with a dog that's not even bred to tree. How frustrating and hard that must have been to get one to do it and then find a female to do it and then try, like if they could do it back then with no internet and no books, like it's, you can do it with all the resources. You just got to be calm and have patience.
Well, it's just like I was saying to my son this morning. We went hunting this morning, and we were saying to him, just listen to this dog, because he's looking at his, and we let him look at the Garmin. Of course, we're trying to make it fun for him and everything.
Yeah.
And we said, put the Garmin down for a second, just listen to the dog,
Mm-hmm.
watch the dog, and pay attention to what's going on. And in a lot of ways, it's so much easier now with the technology, but sometimes the technology keeps you from doing, the things that you need to do is just paying attention.
Yeah.
And it's one of the most fun parts about being in the woods is not being hooked to the technology. So,
Yeah.
you know, he's learning to listen. He's learning to watch. But if you just pay attention to that dog and you see the way they react, and the question I ask myself all the time is, when I insert myself into the equation,
Yeah.
aka make a correction, I ask myself, well, what is this dog going to learn from this correction, or how is the dog going to interpret the correction?
Yeah.
And I do find that to be a helpful question to ask yourself. But outside of that, I think you're right. A lot of this is common sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's probably honestly the hardest thing when working with young dogs is the correction part, because there are so many different factors to take into account, like the individual dog's personality, what it can handle. Um, like around here, there's certain woods, coon hunting, where there's been distemper go through, and
Mm-hmm.
for a few weeks, I was just catching them on the ground, treeing. It was miserable. Like everything you got into was sick, and now there's woods right around the house where you turn loose in, and it doesn't matter what dog you have, probably won't draw a bark. They won't even strike anything. Well, a lot of people wouldn't take that into account and just, oh, this dog doesn't have a nose, this, that, the other. Well, no, not necessarily. You have to take into all the conditions, the movement, the time of year, all like,
Yeah.
I mean, you have to take all that into account, and then also, like I said, the dog's personality. I think that's probably the biggest thing that takes experience, that new people, they just need to get out there and try it, is knowing how to understand the situation, because that's basically when you're correcting all, you have to make that judgment on that situation whether it needs it or not. It's just like parenting or coaching or anything like that. Is it something that they actually did wrong, or was it them actually hustling? Like there's times where I'm hunting my coonhound pups where it hadn't rained in 3 or 4 months and there's nothing on the ground, and they're not striking anything real easy. I got to be understanding and know that. And years ago I probably would have been more impatient, but that's just, it comes with experience.
Well, I think people get frustrated too fast, and I think that being a good woodsman has a lot to do with understanding dogs. Like you got to understand the way game moves, and you got to understand conditions, and that comes with experience, like you said. But it's like you gotta, in my mind, if in doubt, I don't make the correction.
Yeah.
If I'm wondering how a dog's going to interpret a correction, I don't make it. And I'll tell you what else. If I'm fixing to make a specific correction on a dog, I do a whole stinking bunch of prep work trying to make sure that he understands that correction.
Yeah.
Um, I think people that are new to the game, they do crazy stuff like, oh, a dog comes off the tree, and because people say they shock their dogs back on the tree, they shock a dog. Or, I mean, just they don't understand that when people are, stimulating the dog to get back on the tree, that means that for months and months they've done all sorts of prep work to get a dog ready to understand that
Yeah.
situation. And you have to know if a dog can understand it or not, or how they're going to interpret it. And it just it, you do the prep work, and you'll know that the dog's going to know. what you meant. And if you're questioning whether they're going to know or not, then just don't do it.
Right. And it's, you also, that's another thing, take into account the time of year with squirrel dogs or coon dogs. If you're hunting like in the summertime and there's a ton of leaves on, like it's just, there's just so many different scenarios. But like now, like you're kind of saying with like tracking systems and the technology being a good thing and a bad thing, I see a lot of people saying like, oh, you need to quit looking at your tracker so much. It's not, to me, it's not an either or. Like you still need to be in the moment and present and making the
Mm-hmm.
decision on what that, like what's going on, and not just be staring at your phone or Garmin or whatever. But also, it is so valuable. You can, at your fingertips, see exactly where that dog's at and what it's doing. And if you hunt the same area, you know where the den trees are. You know where coon or squirrel, like there's certain trees you tree on all the time, or certain, like there's so many different things you can tell. Like if a dog's backtracking, you can really tell. You could literally follow the line where he struck it and go and see if there's a coon on the other end and know for sure. Like there's so many different things you can use, or like thermals. Like you can be sure that tree is slick or not with coonhounds. Different with squirrels, but I mean there's still just the technology, if used right, is, it's amazing what it can do for you. If you combined the, like you said, the basic woodsmanship with it.
Yeah, I mean, I just think like when you're talking about with leaves on, that's probably one of the biggest things with squirrel dogs. You know, anybody who hunts squirrel dogs when leaves are on, well, I guess anybody, if you're like me, you're going to end up frustrated at some point. You think your dog slipped tree in or whatever. And with a young dog, you know, you probably just don't want to put them in that position
Yeah.
where you start questioning it. And I have been guilty of that over the years. And I know my buddies they'll get all, you know, we all want to be hunting. So in September, we start hunting and the
Yeah.
leaves are on and we're all frustrated, think our dogs are idiots. And then the same thing happens on the flip side. And I've done this before. Here's a mistake I'll admit freely. Um, I've had young dogs to, you know, start to tree, leaves are on, and I'll encourage them to tree when I don't really know what's going on. And I have made that mistake before and done stupid stuff. Like I had a dog, I've had more than one dog do this, but I've had dogs get on chipmunks and I think they were treeing chipmunks after the fact. I
Yeah.
think they were treeing chipmunks and I encouraged them. Didn't know what I was doing because I was just wanting that young dog to tree.
Right.
And then I ended up having to fight that battle for a while because of my own, you know, ignorance. And frankly, if you know, like I said before, if you're going to insert yourself into the game, then you need to know for sure how you're affecting the game.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times we're wise just to keep ourselves out of the game.
Yeah. That's the last one of these I did with Lane Denny. We're talking about just how he starts dogs, and it's, I've known it for a long time. It's just a hard thing to do, but like especially once you get one that's going, that has some natural ability, the biggest thing is just stay out of its way, because there's so many times where you can insert yourself and then just, you're going to cause more problems that you're going to have to try and fix later. If you get one going and it has that natural ability into it, the best thing to do is just let it develop and do its thing without necessarily inserting yourself into the situation.
And you know, I've done this a lot too. Mistakes that I've made. I've taken the fun out of the game. You know, I'll take a young dog and get him started, and then you know, I'm seeing what I want, and so I start pushing harder, and the dog seems to not be enjoying going hunting anymore.
Yeah.
That's something I've been really conscious of the last few years, especially like, am I hunting this dog too hard? Am I putting too much pressure on them to where they don't like what they're doing? And there again, you know, sometimes you keep yourself out of the mix and you get a better result for it. You just got to be smart about when you interrupt the natural process.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Um, that, and I don't know if that's something that can come across in stuff like this, or if that's something that kind of has to click and you got to experience yourself. Because that's a lot of this. There's so many different scenarios that go into everything from the time you get a puppy until it's a finished dog. That that's why people ask advice so much. It's just like you can take the advice and your own experiences and just learn and enjoy it. Like you said, keep the fun in it because there's a lot of people that like I see people advertising that they hunt dogs for other people and they'll say they guarantee they hunt the dog 5 to 7 nights a week and do this and that. And me, I don't look at it as I'm hunting a dog 5 to 7 nights a week for a month. I will go every other night with a dog if it's a coon dog, or I'll go hunt and then maybe if there's something to do with the weather or the conditions I know are not going to be good, I'll maybe give it 2 nights off. But I try and stick to every other night putting it in the woods. I don't care what day of the week it is. I don't say I hunt this many days a week. I try and just give it the best chance for the weather, the conditions, and like you said, if you have a young dog and you're hunting it 5 to 7 nights a week, to me, I have never seen one get better and better and better and better doing that. From an early age, usually they get kind of stagnant and they just it's not as enjoyable. They don't have as much fire. So that's I try and keep that fire alive and just give them a little break in between so when you go out there, they are amped up and ready to hustle and ready to go. It's just like lifting weights or anything with like sports. If you just maxed out lifting weights every single day, I mean that's you're just going to break down and you're not going to make progress. You have to give them a chance to mentally recover, physically, because I mean they're out there, they're working hard. If you're giving them the right opportunity, they've got heart, they're hustling, and that's kind of where I found a good sweet spot for me. If I'm starting dogs, which that's all I do because I'm never gonna have enough money to buy a finished dog, so I have to start my own.
Really?
Uh, I'll keep if I have two good young dogs, that seems to be good for me because I can really hunt one up. And then, like I said, if I'm going every other day, if I want to go 4 or 5 days in a row, I can still do that every other day and just switch dogs. And that's what I've kind of been doing with that Walker and Blue Tick, and it's really worked out well. And that's what earlier this week I took them out together just to see what they would do, and they both have progressed enough in their just natural development that they are going off and they're actually benefiting from it. They're not hunting off of each other, and at first they played that Blue Tick played with the Walker just a little bit because he's never been in the woods with another dog, but now it's to where I know I can take them out pretty consistently, and they're going to give effort and enjoy it. So that's just something that you got to work with, and that's just how I approach it. I don't look at it as a I'm hunting 5 to 7 nights a week. I just try because you can say that, but what happens if you do that and then the dog blows up because you're hunting it into the ground? So I just try and just do what the dog needs, I guess.
Well, I think that's something that, like, a lot of times for me, I hunt 6 days a week for me.
Yeah.
So I gotta be careful because uh, for lack of a better term, I'm a squirrel dog addict. So I have to go every day, and I think that I like to experiment a little bit with dogs. Like, let's say that you take a dog and you hunt it 6 days a week, a young dog, but you only hunt it for 45 minutes a day.
Yeah.
How does it react to that? Or you take the same dog and you go every other day, or you lay it up for a couple weeks and then bring it back out, or then if you want to get deeper into even more intricate stuff, well, what if you kill everything at trees? What if you don't kill anything? What if you just kill one every now and then? They all react to all that differently.
Yeah.
So when a dog starts to get stagnant, then I just like to change something.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important point is that you watch a dog, and I don't like a dog to get into any sort of rut that I don't want.
Yeah.
So if they're like, if I take them out 3 days and I feel like they're being lazy, well then that's too much. I mean, by day number 3, it feels like a pattern to me.
Yeah.
So then I'm going to break that pattern somehow. I'm going to put them in different terrain. I'm going to put them in different weather situation. I'm going to put them with company or maybe without company if they've been with it. Just something to break it, because to me, if you like go pounding the same thing 3, 4, 5 days in a row, Well, now you're creating habits.
Yeah.
And a young dog is very susceptible to a habit, just like a kid is very susceptible to a habit. And you got to be careful. And that's why I think if you take a young dog out, and let's say for example you got a young dog, you don't want to pressure that dog. The dog's maybe a little bit loose on a tree, and you don't want to get forceful with it. Well, yeah, but at the same time, you let that happen 3, 4 days. Well, maybe now it becomes habitual, and so you you go and you do something to keep to break that habit, and maybe you change directions totally. But I'm really really sensitive to a dog doing the same thing 3 days in a row. I do not like it.
Yeah. Unless it's being perfect, then it can do that 3 days in a row.
That's right, which pretty much never happens.
Right. Yeah. No, nature doesn't allow that to happen. Usually something will come up and they just won't be stirring like they normally are, or something will come up to prevent it from happening. But you brought up a lot of good points, and like as far as like shooting game, like that's what people, even like in the videos I post and stuff, ask me like why I'm not shooting every coon that my dog trees. It's like, well, I shot a couple to that Walker pup I have now, and it hit the ground and it just looks at it and it doesn't care. It wants not. It is so natural and bred, which it should be because it's out of two world champions. But it is such a natural. It just wants to run through the woods, find a track, run it, and tree it. It doesn't care about chewing on it, or it just wants to tree it. So to me, it wouldn't make sense just to shoot everything in the woods I have to hunt, because me, like everyone else, I don't have access to the entire world to hunt. So I want to make sure when I go hunting, there's something to tree. The blue tick's a little different. He loves chewing on them, so I will knock him out some. But that's what you got to know your dog, and that's something else that a lot of people do. Like they'll shoot everything their dog trees, and then they start wondering why their dog doesn't recast very well. Well, it's like, well, you you can't shoot everything at trees, and then you take them to a hunt, or you hunt them and then they tree, and then you don't knock them out something. They're not going to want to leave because they're waiting on you to knock something out. So it's a fine line you got to walk, and you just got, like you said, you got to know what to do in that situation and when to insert yourself.
But if your dog's not recasting well and you've been shooting everything, try not shooting stuff for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a math teacher in school that used to call that when you have a math problem and you couldn't figure it out, and you just start trying stuff. She called that brute force. Um, like when you just don't accept the fact that you can't fix this problem. You say, okay, well, I just need to try stuff until I find something that starts to chip away at it.
Yeah.
And if I got a problem with a dog, I'm just going to start changing stuff until it's almost trial and error. But you don't know how they're going to react, so why not do it that way? The
Yeah.
dumb thing you can do is just sit there and keep banging away on the same thing you've been doing, and getting the same product you've been getting until everything just feels like it falls apart. That's the fun of it. Changing it is the fun of it.
Yeah. And it is trial and error. That's a really good way to put it, because every dog is different and every situation is different, and that's you just have you can, in your life and the experience you build up, you kind of know some of the answers that you can give to the problem, but you don't know for sure until you try it. So you just got to see what helps get that dog through whatever it's going through.
Yeah, I teach band. That's my job, choir. And like I'll have a whole bunch of things like phrases that I'll say to fix a certain thing. I hear this certain thing a kid does, and I have like 5 different ways to say the same thing,
Yeah.
and I'll start saying them until one of them hits home, because everybody interprets what you say in a different way. And I think that's what you get from experience as a dog trainer. You get 3 or 4 different ways to address the same problem, and then you try all of them until one of them hits home with the dog. And experience is a good thing, and of course, and the more you do it, you get to stay. Oh well, this is going on. I can do this, and it'll probably make a change. But really, what you need is 3 or 4 different ways to do the exact same thing. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, that's a really good point, because like with teaching and coaching and all that stuff, that's the biggest thing with, as far as education for teachers and coaches, is just learning how to present the same information differently, whether that be through text or song or video or picture or different terminology. It's just presenting it in a way that the person, or in this case, an animal, has the best way of interpreting it and fully understanding what you're saying. Because you can say this is what you're supposed to do, and it might be completely foreign to them, and then you just say it a little bit differently, and it just clicks, and that's the whole thing. It's communication and knowing how to communicate. It's the same thing with, like you said, teaching, coaching, or training. It's all the same thing. It's how you communicate what you want to the person or the dog in this case.
And I think that's why people who, well, I mean, I'm a good example of somebody who likes to teach, likes to train dogs, but so a good coach is often a good teacher.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all the same thing. I mean, and that's why if you really look at it, a lot of your good dog men are, involved with, being a coach. I think I've seen a lot of good dog men who, in my opinion, would be a great school teacher, even though that's not something they're going to do.
Yeah.
They're patient. They're consistent. They're able to problem solve things, and I think all those skills are all a big part of this game.
Yeah, that's very very true, and that's something I'm glad we're talking about because I that doesn't get talked about a lot, but it's a very good point because that it is just it's being patient and being a good decision maker in the moment, and that if you can do that in life in general with dog, like anything or anyone around you is going to be better because you're going to give yourself the best likely outcome for whatever situation you're in.
Yeah, and I'll be honest. The times that I regret are the times that I'm not patient and
Yeah.
I'm not consistent. And everybody screws up, but I regret it with kids. I regret it with dogs. I regret it with friends. Just like, this. I guess it all comes back to the same thing. If you're working on yourself as a human being, a lot of times it comes out in the work that you do with people, animals, whatever it is. So
Yeah, that's 100% right. So I guess going forward, we got. I think that was really good talking about as far as training dogs and kind of your philosophy and kind of my thoughts on it. Um, you already said that's pretty much what you do. It doesn't matter competition versus pleasure dogs. That's just what you're looking for in a dog. And I guess is there a certain point that you really see like a dog's ready to go to a competition hunt?
I mean, I'm kind of crazy about trying to make as many scenarios as possible happen before I feel comfortable doing it. And I don't go to hardly any competition hunts, but when I go, I feel like I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think that's important with introducing a dog to hunting with other dogs. I try to control as much of it as I can to start with, so that I don't let something happen that sends a dog into a mode that I don't want him to be in. Like for example, I hunt puppies by themselves, and you get them to a point where you're like, yeah, this dog's a for real dog. I turn it loose, it goes, it gets treated, it stays, it has the meat. Okay, well, what's the next step? Well, for me, I take a dog that will bark when I tie it up, and I go tie it up. I'll tie the dog up over to the side, see how the dog that I've been working reacts to that. Then I'll take a dog and tie it up and get it barking, and then cut the dog that I've been working beside of it and see how he reacts to that. And I try to like set up scenarios to where I can control
Yeah.
the situation so that bad habits don't happen. And I kind of got a list of things I go through, and then like once I've got a dog through all those things that I think that they're going to have to face in a hunt, and they've successfully kind of passed those tests, then I feel like I'm ready. And my crazy horse dog, he's the one I've been working lately, so he's the one that's fresh in my mind. But he would pass those tests. If I tied a dog off the side, of course he's not going to come loose. Or if I cut him beside a dog that's already treed, he's going to go on. Um, I'll leave him for a really long time. Just the scenarios that you're going to have to be in inside of a hunt that are different than you turning one dog loose and going hunting by yourself.
Yeah.
And when you're satisfied with all of them, then the dog's ready. And then, of course, there's the one that I find really difficult to teach is, travel, because I'm not going to drive 6 hours
Yeah.
and just go pleasure hunting very often. So it's like you don't really know how they're going to handle that. But I do something that I don't know if many people do this, but I put the dog in my truck all day at work. Um, I take the dog to work with me. I go out at lunch, take it out of the truck, and then at the end of the day, then I hunt it. And I do that all the time as soon as the weather is cold enough to permit that.
Yeah.
And I think that gets a dog used to being, riding in the dog box, living in the dog box. There's just all sorts of little things like that. And even at that, last weekend or whatever weekend it was when I had my dog out at the World Hunt and did pretty well. After 3 days of living in the dog box, he started breaking down a little bit. And you could see it, like he didn't want to eat right, and I could see he's breaking down because I haven't pushed him that far on a regular basis.
Yeah. So that's a good segue into, I guess, the World Hunt. You want to talk a little bit about your journey through that and kind of how that went?
Yeah, it was. Well, first off, I went out there with my good friend Christian Pritt. This is the first time I'd ever been to the LBL. So we went out there on Friday. I took Friday off work, and we got there in the evening to hunt. And we hunted a little bit. We probably, honestly, that was one thing I did regret. I feel like I hunted too long on the first day when I got there before the hunt, because we were just excited to be hunting the LBL. So
Yeah.
we we turned loose at like 3 or 3.5 hours before dark, and I was like, man, we should have turned loose in an hour and a half before dark, because we kind of felt like we wanted to hunt.
Yeah.
And, but anyway, the next day, my dog just looked good in every round the first day. But people are always talking about dogs getting breaks. He got breaks, He got breaks where actually it wasn't so much that he got breaks; it's more like other people didn't get breaks. Um, and then when I got to the final cast, he just kind of melted down, and it was sad because I got to the end and I really wanted a chance to win, but the dog just, I could tell before I ever turned him loose, he just wasn't quite there. And like I said, I think that comes from him not doing this on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And so he was kind of mentally, he wasn't all there at the end. But man, I sure was proud of him to make it that far with, I mean, if you look at the dogs that were in that hunt, it was really some amazing dogs. And I was really proud of him to get to the end. And he had several moments along the way where I was super proud of him. I tell anybody that when I go hunt, I just want to be proud of my dog. I don't care if they win. I just want to be proud of my dog. Like the hunt that I went to before that, he lost his first cast, and to me he worked. He was excellent. I wouldn't have changed one thing about what he did. Um, I didn't get the breaks, and somebody else did. And I think the people that don't competition hunt, almost throw myself in that category anymore. I used to do it, but to people that don't do it a lot, you know, I think that if you have a good dog, you'll find you've got a good dog when you take it to a competition hunt too. Like there's not a gigantic difference between what I consider a good dog and what a good competition dog is. I'd say the biggest thing is just, how quick dogs get the job done.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I had a great time, and I'm really proud of my dog. And if I'm proud of my dog, then that means something, because usually I tear them clear to pieces all the time.
Well, that's that's because you've had good ones over the years and you know what a good one looks like. So, well,
Yeah, I mean, I've been fortunate. Um, I've had some really good ones,
yeah.
and my Geronimo dog was a really exceptional dog. He won so many casts, and after him, I kind of quit competition hunting for various reasons. But it just, more than anything, it frustrates me, and when I get frustrated, sometimes I'm not having fun, and then I don't want to do it. And um, I get, it's not that anybody was frustrating me. I think when people talk about, oh, we did a competition hunt and they have a bad cast. I haven't had hardly any bad casts over the years.
Yeah.
What I've had is my dog not do well and me get mad at the dog, and
Yeah.
maybe at myself for not prepping the dog well enough.
Yeah.
Um, and so these more recent dogs, I've tried to prep them, and get myself to where I'd have fun, and I'm having fun again. But I was saying to those guys at the final cast the other day in the World Hunt, I was like, well, I've been to 3 World Hunt final casts, and my dog's never quite operated right at the end. I've never won. Uh, but I sure have been proud of them just for making it that far, because we all know how hard it is to get there. So,
Yeah, and those hunts, there's a lot of top dogs, and it's like you said, the travel aspect and just the constant competing because it's not just like you're going out and pleasure hunting. And
yeah.
most dogs, like when you put them in a cast situation, they're gonna hunt harder than if they're just by themselves. To me, it seems like. So I mean, they're everything's against them as far as being comfortable. They're out of their comfort zone because most people don't have the luxury of going out with 3 or 4 top dogs and just hunting all the time together. So it's all different for them. So it's impressive to do that.
Well, that's why. And the one thing I will say is that if you have a dog that goes hard, there's a reason that that dog is more successful in competition, in my opinion, and that is because that a dog that is super driven, when you put it in weird situations, it's still super driven.
Yeah,
Um, and a dog that is a stereotypical pleasure dog, which would be like a close hunting dog, a dog that maybe doesn't have quite as much zip. Well, I think the reason they don't do well in competition hunt is because a dog that doesn't have extreme drive doesn't deal as well with adversity, in my experience.
yeah, that's true. I mean they have to naturally have that. It's just if they don't, then it's just like people. If you don't have the natural drive to do something, you're probably not going to do it, or you're not going to be very successful at it.
Yeah, and you can't put hunt in a dog. At least I can't. I've tried.
Yeah,
Uh, you can't do it. You can't put hunt in a dog. You can take it out of one, but you can't put it in. And I know that's a classic argument. Can you put hunt in a dog? Well, my answer to that is unequivocally no. You can't.
right. I agree with you 100%. That's the another part of the fun of it too is you don't know that for sure until you get that dog going and see what it's going to do. I mean, you can't just look at a puppy and be like, "Oh, that one's going to have more heart," you know. That's something that you can know through breeding and previous crosses and stuff like that, but that's part of the fun too is seeing how much heart and desire that dog has as it develops.
And I personally like if I get a dog with a lot of heart, um, I can handle a lot of other stuff, and it doesn't bother me. Like Crazy Horse is a good example of that. When he was young and deer running and just making mistakes, and the mistakes didn't bother me because he's just giving it his all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm the same way with people. It's just like my kids in my classroom. I don't care if they're good singers. I don't care if they're good players. I don't care if they have natural ability. If they've got grit, tenacity, uh, that's everything to me. I will stick it out with them no matter what. And I guess that's because that's the kind of thing about myself that I want to be a huge part of. What people see in me, and that's why I think me and this particular dog I'm hunting right now, we get along because what I said to my dad was I said he may not be overly talented, but he's got a lot of drive. I feel the same way about myself.
Yeah.
I'm not that talented, but daggone it, I work hard at it. So
Yeah. That goes a long ways. Like even like with what I'm doing now, like I'm not going to try and brag on myself, but people just assume that I have a lot of money or I went to college for like video stuff or audio stuff or anything like that. Like I literally just a I'm just like all of you out there. Like I love coon hunting and squirrel hunting and raising dogs, but I wanted to be able to capture it and share it with my dad first, and then that changed into what I'm doing now. So I mean, I everything I have done is just it's self-taught, and I'm not gonna fail because I'm not gonna let that happen. I'm just gonna keep learning and progressing, and it'll be rough in the beginning, but it's just gonna keep getting better and better because I'm just gonna keep learning and working hard at it. And that's to me, that's what I would want in it. Like you said, the kid you're working with or a dog is if you just have that will to just work and figure it out, you're eventually going to figure it out. The ones that don't have that will to work and might give up, if something you do goes wrong, like stuff's gonna go wrong. A dog's not gonna perform. None of us are perfect, but you have to know how to learn and adapt and try to limit the mistakes and get better at whatever you're doing.
Yeah, and you know what? You're a great example of that, Clayton, because like you in doing what you're doing right now, you're inspiring other people to do stuff, and I think that's powerful. Like, you know, I was, you know, I hunted with you back when you just started doing this stuff,
Yeah,
and I've watched your videos, and it's inspired me to make videos. You know, for my dad when he's not able to go hunting with me,
yeah,
for you know my future grandchildren, perhaps I don't know. But I've been inspired to make the videos. And you know what? When you're a hardworking person, you inspire people around you. And
yeah,
you know, a hardworking dog inspires me to go hunt. Yeah.
yeah. That's for sure. It's especially in the wintertime or summer, or if the conditions aren't good. If you have a dog that you know it's going to give it your all when you take it out there, it's a lot easier to get off the couch and get out of the air conditioning or get out of the heat and go be in the elements if you know that dog's going to be hustling and giving it its all versus a sorry one that doesn't care if you go or not.
Right. I mean, and all talent aside, that's almost all that matters to me anymore. And you know, when I got one that's got that, I'm pumped. I'm ready to go every day. And I probably go every day anyway, just because, like I said, I'm a squirrel dog addict. But
Yeah,
uh, it makes it more palatable when you think you're getting ready to turn one loose who's going to bust his hind end in there and try to do something.
yeah, that's a very very good point. Well, before we get off of here, is there anything else you would like to add or thank or talk about?
You know, I don't know. I just want to say that for me personally, doing or playing this game all the time is not possible without my incredible family. So I'm sure that everybody that you know goes hunting every day, uh, you got to have a great family. Man, I got the absolute best. I don't know how anybody hunts all the time without a great wife and in my case, a great mom and dad who help out with my children. And I'm just fortunate. I'm so fortunate to be able to you know dedicate myself to something that I really enjoy. And those people just make it to where it works. So I want to thank my family for just being so awesome and helping out. And they said, I mean, like my wife, I don't know if she cares about these dogs at all. She doesn't go hunting with me, but she cares about me enough to you know let me do all this. And um, man, that's really awesome. And I want to say thanks to my boys too because they go hunting with me and we'll walk up these you know incredible West Virginia mountains
Yeah,
with very little legs and be
yep,
pumped about it. And you know, I think I also want to say that I'm really thankful to the mentors that I had young in the game. Like my buddy John Love, who said that he took a bunch of people dog hunting, and I was the only one that wanted to keep going after multiple trips.
yeah,
And you know, like Alan Franklin, who's mentored the heck out of me over the years, and Kenny Smith, who's mentored the heck out of me over the years. Everybody in the dog world needs that, and I think we all, as dog hunters, need to be opening ourselves up to be that for somebody. Um,
yeah,
and I know, that, like taking kids hunting, that's a huge. I think it's just good to be available and open for people to take them out, and that's kind of how we need to all pay back what's been given to us in this dog game. So, you know, if anybody's watching this who lives anywhere near me and you want to go hunting, I'll go hunting with you any day. Just come and you know, just call me and ask, and I'd love to go take some people and spread this thing that you know that to me is like the greatest part, the greatest fun, I should say, that I get to have in life. So, and I appreciate you getting me on here to talk about stuff. It's fun to talk about dogs. I'd probably talk about them all stinking day if I could.
yeah. Very well said. I'm the same way. I feel like this was a good conversation that anyone can really benefit from, whether you're a new person getting into it or an older person that's been doing it for a while. I think there's a lot of good information in here, and it might be new to you, or it might just be reaffirming what you already know. But it's good to get it out there and talk about it and see different perspectives because I was raised coon hunting, and we squirrel hunted some with our coon dogs, and then I got into more squirrel dogs as I got older. But I'm mostly a coon hunter, but I still squirrel hunt, and you're a squirrel hunter, so it's neat to see how similar
Oh yeah.
all this can be. So it's
We're all the same. All a dog man's a dog man. Um, that's my experience, and you can kind of. It's so easy to relate to one. I'm sure I haven't spent a bunch of time talking to like bird dog men or anything like that, but I guarantee that if I did, I'd probably feel the same way. I listened to a story one time about guys who have dogs. They live in New York City and they hunt rats with dogs,
yeah,
and it was amazing. I watched this story and I thought, dude, that guy's just a dog man, just like me. I can see it. It's written all over his face.
yeah,
Uh, so we're all kind of the same. We might be playing slightly different games, but we're all the same.
that's 100% right. Well, thank you for taking time out of your day away from your family to come on here and talk. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, buddy. It's good talking to you, and I hope I get to come up there and kill some of those fox squirrels again sometime.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Hopefully, it's not 5 degrees like it was last time I came up.
And with like 40-mile-an-hour winds too.
Oh gosh, man, that was brutal. And actually, my memories that popped up the other day of some of those pictures, and all the pictures you could see were all froze to death.
Yeah, looks like we're hunting in Antarctica or something.
That's right.
All right, well, thank you, and we'll stay in touch. I appreciate it.
All right, I look forward to seeing the new videos you put up, especially about this young Walker dog. I really enjoyed that one, so I can't wait to see what you got coming.
Sounds good. We'll talk to you
All right,
later.
see you, Clayton.
Yep, bye.